today what we're going to be doing is fixing a lock. We have a 7-pin tumbler, and here's the cylinder for it. The springs are already in there, so we don't need to worry about that. It was entirely apart. I had this in pieces, all the springs were out. This unit, the inside cylinder here, slides right out. It's got a little bit of motion to come out. And here's the clip that will go on the back of that right there. The back of the plug, sorry, not cylinder. Here's all the pins that belong inside the cylinder body. These are obviously the front of it. That'll slide in this way. It'll go in just like this. But I'm not going to do that just yet, because we obviously need to get the pin situated, because if you have any understanding of how a lock works, and I'm not going to run through that because there's plenty of other videos that explain it very well, but we need to get these pins to line up just right. I have with me the key, and I hope if you're doing this you have the key too. If you don't, then you're a sad state. So we'll just put the key in, and we'll get it to that point right there. Should be right on the bottom. Should be able to see key lining up with that slot there. If that clip was in here, which it's supposed to be, that would stop the key from going too far. So we'll just need to line that up, and you can see the pins, they'll get nice and lined up. So we know this is our unlocked position. So this is our starting ground. So what we need to do, and I recommend you do this too, well, I recommend it because I very organized, kind of methodical approach to a lot of things. I have a spreadsheet, which is this right here, and what I do is, obviously you can see that I've lined up the holes. Obviously I have 7 holes, and I have the different pins here color coded and to what size they are. It's very self-explanatory. The XP3 and the XT, they are from some math, which is right there. And that was me figuring out the next little bit. I'll bring that up in a minute. First, like I said, we got to figure out these initial pins to get this to the unlocked position. So what we do is I've got it laid out on that Excel sheet, and we'll put the key in, get it all set. Here, hang on. I'll take it off the ring, that way I can just set it down. This is an incredibly tedious process. If you can avoid doing this, please do it. Or, if you're thinking, hey, I'm looking for a great project, this isn't a great project. What happened to me is I got bored, as fate would have it, and picked the lock. The whole thing came out, and I kinda got screwed. So, gotta figure this out. What we're going to do is, and here, I'll move this down here, get this back into the unlocked position. Right about there will do it. And I already have it in the Excel sheet, so I know what pins go where, which is why I highly recommend that. So in case you're sitting here and maybe you're listening to some music, or maybe you're listening to a comedian and you laugh, or your cat jumps up on the table out of nowhere, or you have a 3-year-old that comes in and mommy or daddy and hits you and woof, and there it all goes. At least you'll know where it all goes after that. With that said, I know exactly where these are going, so I can just take these and plop them right in. And believe me, it took me a long time to figure this frickin' thing out. This wasn't a walk in the park. But yes, I'm just going to take these and that system that I came up with in that Excel sheet, that is entirely mine. That's nothing professional. That's nothing approved by any group or what have you. Those foundations came to me and said, "That's a great idea. We're going to use your standard." I'm not a professional at this. I'm just curious like you guys are. So, we have that. Next, what I had to do was, because when this is unlocked, the rest of these pins, it'll be pushed down into here, and these springs are going to be in the way. Here comes in this math. Now, some of you might look at that and go, "Oh, okay, I get it." Others might look at that and go, "What the heck are you talking about?" You have the springs in there. Those are going to take up some distance, some height from your room in there, in each of the shafts, if you want to call them that. I don't know if they have a specific name. But you want to figure out, I took out the not each spring, I took out a couple of springs just to kind of get an average of it. Took them out, I compressed them all the way down and measured how far. Now granted, my measurements aren't precise, but I gave myself some leeway. I measured with this. I was using the millimeters over here. So again, they're not extremely precise. I would have loved to have some calipers or a micrometer or something, but I don't have the luxury of that. So I used that. What I did is, when you put the key in, you can look at the key and you can see this tooth right here is going to be your highest point out of all of these. So you know that that's going to be your limiting tooth. When you put it in, that's going to be the highest point that each of these pins is going to hit. So when you put it in, you can see there's the first valley, and then it raises up, and at that highest point on that first pin, you can see that's that measurement that you're going to have to make as to what distance, how far that part of it is going to push that spring down. Because that's obviously that part of it, that part of the key has to pass by that pin, and if you don't take that into consideration, you're going to be out a couple millimeters, and your pins on the inside of this aren't going to have anywhere to go, and you're going to be in trouble. So when you put that in, you're going to have to go through each pin, going through and making measurements, taking names. And then once you get to the end, you really don't need to worry about that last pin, because once you hit it, it's there. Your key's not going past that point, so that tooth isn't going to affect that last pin. But it's just that second to last pin, and everything before it is going to be affected by that. So you really need to take that in consideration. You need to, and every key's different. It's a really important factor. Please don't forget that. So we have that all set. Again, I already did those measurements that came up in the math. I had to measure the height of that, and then the height of the spring totally compressed, and subtract those distances from the entire distance from here, the very top of the cylinder, bottom of the cylinder here, all the way down to the bottom, so you can see where all the springs would come down to. That's the point. So I mean, I measured from that lip right there down to the bottom and kind of took away maybe a millimeter, just because these are indented and it's off a little bit. So I mean, like I said, measurements not precise, they'll do. I'm not launching a spaceship here. So I came up with, again, in the spreadsheet, I came up with the combination of pins here what I did is I took each of these pins and I would line up, I would put a couple of them next to each other. I would measure, again with this, I know not too precise, but it is what it is. I would measure them and come up with some kind of combination that would be equal to or less than, not too much less than, because if I went less, then another hole would be filled up with too much more pin than needed, and it wouldn't be able to unlock. So you get that all set, and you know where each of them have to go, or hopefully. Whoop. So what we can do, and this is going to be the worst part of it all, and what you're going to want to do is grab something really small, because this is going to be, it's a very fine and delicate process, and you are going to get extraordinarily pissed off at it because it's so fine. Unless there's tools out there for it, I don't know. I don't have them. I'm not a locksmith. I'm not claiming to be anything, right? So I have just a paperclip. That's it. Straightened out so that I can come in here, and what I'm going to do is with this first, well, excuse me, that's the last, it's got to go in this way. First, with the first slot, I know I'm going to need, referencing back to my Excel sheet, a number 4 pin, which on the sheet corresponds to a white pin. So what I'm going to do is grab me one of these white pins, and I have to slide that in there, get it lined up with the hole. And like I said, this is extremely delicate. If you have shaky hands, find somebody younger, or find somebody with less shaky hands if you're young and have Parkinson's or something, which that's unfortunate, but I'm not picking anybody here. Oh my god. So you can see it's delicate, and it's very difficult, and you push it down in there, and I gotta hold it there because I know I have to have another pin to go in there, because if I don't, it's not gonna work. So my spreadsheet says that I need, oh I'm sorry, I just did it the entirely wrong order. I went backwards. Backwards on my spreadsheet. The order how I have it is in my hole to level chart is level 1 is what's closest to the plug. Well, actually level 1's in the plug. And then level 2, 3, and 4 are, level 2 would be here, and then 3, and then 4. So I have to start with 4 putting in here and work my way back. That's how it is. So I'm going to need this pain in the ass one, because I have a 1 size pin right here, and I'm going to have to do that same thing. And then what I'm going to do is do that for all of them, and as I finish the first one, what I'm going to have to do is, once I get all of them in there, I'm going to have to slide this in, but because the key slot, I'm going to cover these pins up so they don't fall out, because of the key slot on the bottom, the pins, if I just left that open, the pins are going to shoot up in there, and I don't want that. So I'm going to have to put this in slightly cocked so that I can slide it over the spring one thing at a time. That way nothing shoots out and I don't lose anything. And then once it's all set, I'll just rotate this down so that these holes right here are facing downward onto the rest of these holes in the springs.